The Rise and Fall of Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle? Did I read that correctly? Fatty Arbuckle, a comedy pioneer by Hats of Entertainment. I have no idea what this is. Probably a silent movie, as usual, as everything related to movies is about silent movies, a lot. That I've reacted to, at least. And yeah, we're gonna look at this. I am probably expecting... well, maybe some fat jokes, but yeah, I think we'll just go in. We'll just go in. Also, please consider liking and subscribing. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Don't autoplay. Thank you. That's pretty good. That's pretty cool. And yeah, here we go.
When discussing the pioneers of silent film comedy, there are usually three people that most cite.
Pioneers of silent film comedy. Well, that kind of makes sense. Interesting. I mean, it does make kind of sense that comedy would play a big role regardless, because it is I think easier to portray than other forms of genres, but that's just me.
Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, and Harold Lloyd. Each of them had their own distinct comedy styles, mannerisms, wardrobe, and reactions that aided their performances and made them some of the biggest film stars of their time. But there was another silent film clown who I feel is often overlooked. Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. He not only helped launch the careers of both Keaton and Chaplin, he also redefined what silent film comedy was about. Now, despite his physical size, he could run just as quick as Keaton could, move just as nimble as Chaplin did.
I mean, yeah, see. That's oftentimes not really the problem, right? There's other issues, obviously, but he's not also, like, super duper fat, let's be real here. He's a chunker, but he's not super fat. Like, not, 2020's American fat. So that makes sense. But yeah, I see it. I get it. I see it. I see it. I guess it makes sense.
And think just as inventive as both of them. He eventually made the transition to sound films too, excelling at verbal humor.
Oh, you are a baker.
Yes, sir, and I sure need dough.
But we'll get to this later on. He was
the fat jokes. Like I said, they were about to come anyways. Oh, you're a big guy.
also the first movie star to make $1 million a year, which makes it all the more tragic that he isn't more commonly talked about today, especially amongst younger film fans.
That's pretty impressive. For back then, that's probably very impressive. Not bad at all.
In fairness, when he is brought up, it's mostly for being embroiled in the first major Hollywood scandal, one that he was later proven to be innocent in. But the damage was done, and Arbuckle would never again regain the same footing he once had in the industry.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, though. Where are the allegations even? See, the problem always is, right? The moment there's allegations out there, people don't really care even if you're absolved of your supposed crime, right, and proven innocent. It doesn't, or whatever you've done, right? It doesn't, like, go back to normal after that. Right? It doesn't really, you won't get it back. That's the main issue, right? And, see, it's an overall public issue because the public just cares about, like, what you supposedly done, not that you've not done it, right? It's always been like that. So yeah, interesting.
Even damaging his legacy over a century later by most associating a certain negative stigma around his name. This video is not solely about that scandal though. I want to instead talk about his comedy, his life, and his art, as well as attempt to reinstate a legacy that was tragically tarnished. This is the story of Fatty Arbuckle, but he preferred to be called Roscoe. Roscoe Arbuckle was born in 1887, weighing 13 pounds at birth. And just as soon as he was out of the womb, the nickname Fatty had been assigned to him by his father.
That's diabolical. That's diabolical. He's what I imagine Poker looked like. But I'm not fat, so there's the problem. That's the problem. I've even just recently dropped 6 kilograms. So, you'd be shocked. Holy fuck. Wow. Wow, your dad is like, yes, you are a chunker. Right? Right? Your dad is like, my guy, you are fat, so I'm gonna call you Fatty. Wow! The dad was locked in, it appears. The dad was very locked in, so it would seem. When are your allegations happening? There are no allegations. And if I ever got any, I'd never beat them with most. Probably.
Roscoe was never comfortable with the nickname, but it stuck for most of his life. His birth, which was traumatic for his mother, ultimately contributed to health problems that led to her death. His father...
Oh, that's sad. That's sad. That's sad. Yeah. So now it's just his father who called him a fatty. Crazy work.
would then forever blame poor Roscoe for her death, and also refuse to support him, abandoning him shortly after. So at age 11, Roscoe learned to begin fending for himself, getting jobs as an errand boy at local hotels and theaters, where he eventually was noted for his vocal talent and given a chance to perform on the stage, eventually becoming an actor himself. He gravitated more towards comedy performance as a defense mechanism for his low self-esteem and traumatic childhood. Despite finding acclaim on the stage,
which isn't surprising. I feel like it's really a stereotype, but obviously that stereotype does have a how is that? How do you say this? The stereotype does have some hold. See, every single time somebody is like, right, they're not particularly ideally attractive, right? Or they're overweight. They try to compensate that with humor. Maybe it's a stereotype, but it, from my experience, does apply decently often enough to where I say there's some truth to it. At least that's what I believe.
Roscoe had trouble finding sustaining work. When stage work had proved too hard to come by, Roscoe then took a job as a performer in the newly founded motion picture business in 1909, which at the time was considered embarrassing, degrading work. Real actors belonged on the stage. That was the perception of most at that time. In 1913, he became an extra at Mack Sennett's Keystone Studios, known for their crazy Keystone Cop comedies. It soon became clear, however, that Arbuckle had the type of physical talent that motion pictures were created to showcase, and even as a background performer, he managed to steal the show. Despite his large frame and build, Arbuckle...
That sounded... See, the way he did that, right, physically, is like at his size, still impressive, right? He basically rolled backwards. Most people that size nowadays wouldn't be able to do that in that way. That's very interesting.
was incredibly light on his feet, and a gifted acrobat. Partnering with Senate regular Mabel Normand, Arbuckle quickly rose to movie stardom, with audiences celebrating his visual inventiveness in front of the camera. He rarely, if ever, relied on his weight as a way to actually craft jokes. He was just naturally funny, and a very gifted physical comic. Arbuckle had another co-star by the name of Luke the dog, his pet bull terrier, who much like
That is that is a skill. That is a skill. Throwing a mail straight into the mailbox, right? Not even modern mailmen can replicate this skill. Huh.
his owner, became the biggest star of his species.
The biggest star. Anyways.
Arbuckle was never afraid to share the spotlight with his talented friends and co-stars. His comedy shorts were so popular and successful that Senate eventually gave him free rein over the production of his films. The silent film comedian then became the silent film director and silent film editor as well. He did it all, making a tidal wave in the film industry.
So not only did he become decently well known as a silent film actor, but also a silent film director. That is impressive. That is very impressive. I could throw mail straight into the mailbox. Yo, if I could, I would. If I could, I would try. But I lack the skill. I lack the skill to do so. I'm not that talented yet. I can't do that. I can't do that. I probably could deliver packages better than Amazon though, because at least I deliver them intact.
But it was another arrival at Keystone Studios that was making his own splash. An English stage actor known as Charlie Chaplin. Arbuckle took the young actor under his wing and showed him the ropes of film production.
Oh, that is cool. That is very cool. That is awesome. Okay, interesting.
It's even suggested that Arbuckle helped Chaplin work out the costume for his most famous creation, the Little Tramp. Chaplin would even borrow one of Arbuckle's gags later in his career. Eventually, both men were lured away from Keystone Studios to set up shop on their own. Arbuckle signed for an unheard of deal of $1,000.
Is that a butt? Interesting. Both Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton directed their movies. Most people forget this. That's pretty impressive. Not only like being the main actor, but also being the director.
A day to make comedies. He set up his own studio, named Kamike, and went about procuring the finest talent in the comedy industry. One such talent was a giant of the stage, but had an interest in making the transition to film, Buster Keaton.
I like how all these guys are somewhat related, related to like have a relationship here. That's really interesting, right? That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. They're all in some way, shape, or form. Their work is related to each other. I think that's pretty interesting.
Upon meeting, Arbuckle threw the young Keaton into one of his films, without much rehearsal, as a test to see how Buster could handle himself on film. The following sequence happened as a result.
The fucking hat was glued on. That's hilarious.
Impressed with the talent of the young comic, Arbuckle formed a formal partnership with Keaton, and
That looked cool. That looked cool. It looked really, that looked really cool. He threw that whatever that was. Was that whatever it was, whatever the white powdery stuff was. The way he got knocked over looked really cool.
The two became a duo. Much like he had shown Chaplin the ropes, Arbuckle taught Keaton everything he knew about film production. Everything from how the camera worked to how to splice film.
I wonder how many of these stunts, right? If you can call them that, I think you can call them right. How many of those stunts cause genuine injuries or bruises or anything? I could imagine with like not the technology that we have now, that there was probably a few accidents going on, because like one wrong movement and that's gonna hurt. That's gonna hurt a person falling on top of you.
Two would also become lifelong friends.
Or you just falling. But I guess they do probably train how to properly fall, I'm assuming.
In 1918, Arbuckle was offered a staggering $3 million for 3 years contract to direct and star in feature films for Paramount. He handed the keys of Kimike over to his good friend Buster, and soon he was the biggest, both metaphorical and literal, star in the world. As well as things were going for Arbuckle at work, things were not so great at home. He had married an actress named Minta Durfee in 1908, but several work-related injuries led him to develop a morphine and alcohol dependence, which began to affect his home life.
So he became an addict. Is the simple conclusion you would come to? He became an addict, and that's where we are now. He essentially became an addict. Interesting. And he took the $3 million deal. Not bad.
Over the next 2 years, Arbuckle starred in 9 feature comedy films. Sadly, 3 of these films are lost, due to them being destroyed when the scandal later broke, while they were still waiting to be released. It actually became encouraged for theater owners at the time.
Doing drugs is not good, very obviously. So the scandal was actually that he was an addict. Okay. Well, wait. No, that can't be the scandal, because like, how do you disprove being an addict unless like he actually disproved that he wasn't an addict? Hold up, wait a minute.
To destroy prints of his film in protest before a verdict had even been reached. Prior to the scandal, Arbuckle's work was actually hailed as being some of the most wholesome in the business. Arbuckle said at the time, "I shall produce nothing that will offend the proprieties, whether applied to children or grown-ups. My pictures are turned out with clean hands and therefore with a clear conscience, which, like virtue, is its own reward."
Ain't no way. Oh, that's hilarious. Like, he is a nurse and then Buster Keaton. That is okay. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Okay, bro, stop. He needs to stop. What is this? What are we doing?
But that virtue would soon amount to a hill of beans. I said at the beginning of this video that I didn't want to talk about the scandal too much, but I have to at least address it for context. In essence, here's what happened. On a break from filming on Labor Day 1921, Arbuckle traveled from LA to San Francisco for a much-needed vacation. It was at a party he hosted that weekend that a young actress, Virginia Rappe, became ill, suffering from an overconsumption of alcohol. Roscoe called a doctor and had Rappe treated on site. The following week, though, Rappe died, in what was theorized to be in relation from injuries.
Wait, so the allegation was that he... Okay, so it wasn't the morphine and alcohol. It was the allegation was that he supposedly may have murdered her?
She suffered at the hands of Arbuckle, a false accusation started by a fellow partygoer who was a known blackmailer. The scandal then became a media sensation, the first of its kind in the industry. Arbuckle was slandered and lied about in the press on a daily basis. Despite a severe lack of any incriminating evidence, the public perception led the case, fueled by the spread of misinformation in the press.
Yeah, interesting. So just like today, this is just how you falsely accuse me. Huh? Interesting. So there's not much difference to the press back then and now. Well, more so now. It's like the internet and websites and shit. But like, it's still the same. But that's pretty much. It's still pretty much the same, or at least similar to what it usually would like back then was. Very interesting.
At the time, it's worth mentioning that many religious groups were leading a crusade that would lead to the establishment of the Motion Picture Production Code. Arbuckle became the much-needed poster child for all that these religious groups felt was sinful in Hollywood. Studios put out strict instructions for their stars not to defend Arbuckle. If the ship was sinking, Arbuckle would go down alone. His friends Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin were amongst the only ones to speak on behalf of Arbuckle and voice their support for him. After 3 strenuous trials, Arbuckle was proven innocent by a jury, who in a rare move read the following statement along with their verdict. Acquittal is not enough for...
That makes sense. IGT, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. Hello. Interesting. So, yeah, that he's never recovering from that because other actors didn't speak out about it.
Roscoe Arbuckle. We feel that a great injustice has been done to him. We feel also that it was our plain duty to give him this exoneration under the evidence, for there was not the slightest proof adduced to connect him in any way with the commission of a crime. He was manly throughout the case, and told a straightforward story on the witness stand, which we all believed. The happening at the hotel was an unfortunate affair, for which our...
Well, certainly was unfortunate. I mean, makes sense, right? The thing is, like, so the press ran their mouths, right? Makes sense. And it was everywhere. Everywhere saw it. And the press, off of that, obviously, won't share the fact that he was exonerated, right? They won't share that. So everyone will think that he did something he didn't do. And well, it was already said he's never gonna recover from that. Yeah, that didn't happen, Croc Rock.
Arbuckle, so the evidence shows, was in no way responsible. Naturally, an exhausted and heartbroken Arbuckle tried to regain his footing as a comedy star. But even proven innocent, studios still believed that the bad press he generated would carry over to his films. He directed a few films under the pseudonym William B. Goodrich before turning to a series of live nightclub performances, where he often received a standing ovation from audiences.
Huh. Okay, so he directed his own movies under an alias and then just like some live performances. Wow, so he really essentially did not really recover from that. Just like the Michael Jackson thing. Kind of, yeah. That was also never proven, right? But the press still ran with it. It's pretty much similar to what's happening here.
Despite this, movie studios still believed that he wasn't a bankable talent, and they wanted little to do with him. Years later, after much public pressure from talents like Keaton and Chaplin, Jack Warner stepped up and hired Arbuckle for a series of comedy shorts at Warner Brothers. Arbuckle was overjoyed. He would step in front of the camera for the first time in 11 years and speak on camera for the very first time.
Well, I'm certainly glad they're coming your way and not mine.
Bruh. Also, he has a nice voice.
Listen, partner, I don't know whether this is going to work or not. But if it does, anything that comes in on that floor through the window, put it in the pot.
Okay.
Arrivederci. There you are, kid. There's food. Get her in there.
Did he just catch a whole bunch of carrots? That's not bad. I would never play Honkai Star Rail because it's a horrible game.
And not only that, he would no longer have to use a pseudonym. He could be Roscoe Arbuckle once more. For being away from film acting for as long as he was, Arbuckle proves here that he was willing to adapt and put his past behind him.
Rage baiting. Rage baiting in the Dark Ages. I see how it is.
Watch it bounce right back into my arms.
Let me guess, bro's mom was in there, or grandmom, or something? Something like that.
Be doggone.
These shorts were a great success, and Warner announced that they would be signing him to make a series of feature films as well.
If it wasn't, you couldn't do that with it. Certainly.
Diabolical. Hey, at least he didn't get slapped and, at least he didn't get slapped and turned into a clown. You must be strong to punch a brick and break it. Bro, you gotta definitely strong to punch the wall and not be, like, fucking dying at this point. Out of pain, because, yeah, that's gonna hurt. Hi, Lumpy, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. Hello, what's up, my clankers? We're all AI? I didn't know that.
Well, why can't you do that with it?
Arbuckle, who many believed had wrongly gone to trial for the sins of an industry, was finally on the path to redemption.
See, olden days bottle flips were better. There were knife flips. Anyways, he who gets slapped. True. Time to turn into a clown.
2 eggs.
Huh? Well, that was rather random, don't you think? Bro just so. Bro, okay, so bro took out whatever was in the small pan, flipped the pan, and put it back in.
Scramble 'em.
2 tackles, hot and bothered.
But in a life plagued with tragedy, bad timing would follow Arbuckle till the end. He died in his sleep of a heart attack shortly before he was supposed to sign this new contract with Warner in 1933.
Well, that's the problem with such a weight. That is the problem, sadly. That's why I'm always saying, right? Being overweight will come with its consequences when you're older. I always say that. And well, here we are. You killed my heart with those words. Well, I just think they're almost all bad. Especially Genshin Impact, actually.
He was 46 years old. Roscoe Arbuckle changed film comedy forever. It's impossible to look at his work and not see that. For decades, there has unfairly been a stigma associated with his name. Regardless of the facts or fabrications, I have found that few have taken an interest in his work because of this. Hell, try finding a DVD or Blu-ray set of his films. They're virtually non-existent or out of print. And that's not just because theaters made a spectacle of destroying his films in the 20s. One of his shorts that was believed to be lost was actually found in 1998.
So you're telling me that they essentially, due to the scandal, nuked all of his movies? That's pretty depressing, turns out, Clown Sapoga. Did you get slapped before you started YouTube? Nope. Luckily not. Nah. Maybe. 1933 was just some years ago, though. Dude. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. Soon gonna be 100 years ago. Well, in a few more years.
Which gives hope that more of his supposed lost work is out there still. Whatever your views on his personal life may be, Roscoe Arbuckle is owed a debt of gratitude by anyone who has laughed at someone taking a pie in the face, Buster Keaton taking a pratfall, or Charlie Chaplin performing his table ballet. We all owe a tip of the hat to Roscoe Arbuckle.
Or Roscoe. Yeah, that was an interesting video. Not bad. That was very interesting. So he was essentially one of the strongest. How do you say that? One of the biggest pushers. And how do you say this? Forefathers. I don't know, of comedy, which is pretty interesting. 1933 was 60 years ago. 60 years before I was born. Wow. Very interesting. Yeah, he influenced a lot. CPOC has said the best videos. Clearly the best videos ever. Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, this was interesting. Very cool.